Okay. It says it's thinking as it's loading. And I'm hoping I will be able to see, there it is. Well, let's see this live. And hopefully that will do that. And okay. Okay, well, we'll just assume that's working. Again, famous last words. Okay, I'm gonna hit the record button.
Yeah, it says live on Facebook on mine.
Excellent. Well, welcome everybody. It's 5 o'clock, so it must be day drinking with Wes Hagen. So welcome to week 18 or whatever we've done. I think it's about week 18, and I'm really excited about tonight's show. We've got Beth Vukmanic. I'm going to say that right. I'm going to do my best. And she's from the Vineyard team here on the Central Coast of California. And we get to talk about growing grapes and why it matters how your wine is grown tonight. So I think we've got a pretty good agenda. I've got some excellent questions. We're going to be talking not only about grapes, we're going to be going off subject, talking about wine, some of our favorite things, all sorts of amazing, wonderful things. We're going to be talking a little bit about our backgrounds, a little bit about how Beth got into this, what she's seen since she's been at the Vineyard team, the history of the Vineyard team, and sort of what does it mean to be conventional, sustainable, organic, biodynamic, and how does it impact the flavor of the wine, and why does it matter to folks like us with some wine in the glass? Does it really matter how the wine tastes or how we perceive the wine in the way that it's farmed? Fortunately or unfortunately, I was a vineyard manager for over 20 years in the Santa Rita Hills, and I do have quite a bit of technical information about viticulture and how grapes are grown, canopy management, dirt, and everything else that we're going to be talking about today. But I'm also an educator who understands that to move the information that I have in my brain to make it useful to your brain, we've got to move that carefully. So I'm going to try today to encourage myself as well as Beth to try to make sure we're not using terms that viticulturists would only understand. So if for some reason you have a question, I'm going to try to keep an eye on my Facebook page to make sure that if you guys have questions as they come in, we'll make sure. And if you have a question, you're not getting it answered, you can always jump on the Zoom, because I will bring up our questions from our chat in the Zoom. Let's see, Beth, why don't you give us a little bit of a background on yourself and a little bit about the Vineyard team?
Sure. Yes. So I've been with the Vineyard team for 11 years now. I moved to the Central Coast, San Luis Obispo, to attend Cal Poly, and I got a degree in agricultural business there. I worked kind of a few different random odd jobs before I ended up at the Vineyard team. I'm a harpist, so I've played professionally doing that. I actually got to work at a company that builds them. And then I worked for a custom sculptor who builds these big, beautiful trophies for the PGA. So that was a really cool thing too. Got to work with a bunch of golf pros. And then very luckily stumbled upon the Vineyard team and have just absolutely loved working there ever since. It's a really great organization. Been around for 25, I think going on 26 years, started in 94. And it did begin here on the Central Coast with a group of farmers that were looking for ways to farm more sustainably. And they wanted to learn from each other. So they would meet up on the back of someone's tailgate in the field and talk about resource issues, whether that be water conservation or how to better educate their employees around safety. And that's a huge component of what we still do. We call them tailgate meetings because a lot of times they're on a tailgate in someone's field talking about current resource concerns. So education is the foundation of what the Vineyard team does. And we have a lot of programs that still work towards that goal. So the tailgate meetings, we have a 3-day conference in November every year called the Sustainable Ag Expo, where we're able to bring in experts nationally and internationally to talk about technical viticulture. We also have a podcast called Sustainable Wine Growing, which has been around for a couple of years now. And that's been a really fun project. And what a cool way to get access to people all over the globe who have different experiences and expertise. And then we developed SIP certified too. So that was the first self-assessment for sustainable vineyard farming. And we launched that in 96. And that was used as a way for farmers to kind of evaluate their practices. So they'd answer all these questions. How are they preserving their habitat? What are they doing for water quality? How are they training their employees? How is their business sustainable? And they get a scorecard. And then we would encourage them to find new practices along the way that they could implement the next year. And so after that, we would have them take the self-assessment again with the hopes that they would improve their score. And after doing this for years and years and years, we found that people do improve their scores over time. So it was this fabulous learning tool that actually helps people change and improve their practices. So in the early 2000s, that's when we shifted to certification. So we had a group come to us that said, you know, we want to claim sustainability, but we want something to validate that claim. And so we used that program, beefed it up, made it really specific, measurable, so it could be audited, and launched what is now SIP certified.
That's awesome. And actually, you might not know that in 1995, 1996, I was one of the early adopters at Clopepi Vineyards in the Santa Rita Hills. And I worked with Chris, and I worked with the whole team and everyone who was there. Well, I think it was Chris, actually. And I took the original assessment. I still, and Chris should know, I'm still incredibly sad that I still have an incomplete for my SIP certification at Clopepi. Unfortunately, I was a one-man show there. I did the viticulture, I did the winemaking, I did the hospitality, I did the website with my wife, of course. She was incredibly helpful. But I never got my SIP certification at Clopepi. But the things I learned as a result of taking the survey, and that, I mean, it is an intense situation to go through and rate your own. If you're honest about the assessment, I don't think, I mean, Davis classes, working at Babcock, being a vineyard manager, I don't think there was one other experience I had that taught me more about the current state of viticultural, education and successful practices than going through that SIP certification. In fact, I would say just to be able to see that and go through SIP certification, if you have a backyard vineyard or you're just interested, you're going for your WSET 3 or you want to be an advanced sommelier. Boy, if you want to know about canopy management, if you want to know about, soil, if you want to know about pests, if you want to know about how to treat, and the one thing that we did is it really focused us in and how to treat our employees. And we'll talk about that. But one thing I want to say is one thing we did after we went through the SIP process, we actually took about a half an acre of our property and designated it as a specific farming area for our employees. And so we established basically that our employees could, on the clock, 30 minutes a day, farm a piece of dirt on our property for them and their families, with the idea, and I think this is going to be the overarching theme. The more your employees feel that they have been included in the process of farming fruit, otherwise known as make sure they taste the wine that we're making, bring them to the winery, have them understand the process and why we're doing what we're doing. We're not just plucking leaves. We're pulling the leaves to improve the quality of the fruit. And if they're growing strawberries and they're growing broccoli and they're growing peppers and tomatoes and onions on the same piece of dirt that they're growing Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, boom, you're just going to get better fruit. They're going to be better people as a result. I think our next question is going to be, and I'm going to actually ask you to do this first, and then I'll kind of riff a little bit on what you said, but to define what sustainability means to you.
Yeah, we really like the 3 Ps of sustainability. So we talk about people, planet, prosperity. So sustainability is all about meeting today's needs without preventing the future from meeting theirs. And I love what you said about the self-assessment, or using SIP as a self-assessment as being such a great learning tool. And that actually is still available to anybody who wants to do it. So if somebody does have, like you said, a backyard vineyard and they're just curious, they can sign up and do that. It's a really fun process.
That's awesome. I love the idea of, people, planet, prosperity. To me, we were just talking a couple nights ago about id ego and super ego. They're not real. They're just ways that we explain the energy in a system. And I would think people, planet, and prosperity, because you can't have a planet without, or you can't have people without a planet, and you can't have people without prosperity. So as I was thinking about this earlier, I was thinking about vibing, and we'll talk a little bit about the 3 Ps in a bit, but that there's really no beginning and ending of this. This is a very cyclical and a very holistic process of recognizing that people need prosperity, people need a planet. So we're all kind of working on this together. We got lots of people coming out on Facebook Live. So I just wanted to say hello to Jennifer and Dawn and Phil and Denise and Michelle Shin and Phil again, and Mark, and everyone's coming on. So I really, really appreciate all you guys coming in. If you have any questions, I am watching Facebook. I'm trying not to look at it because it's a 6-second delay. So, but that's all well and good. Love it. Is Vineyard Team a nonprofit organization? And how is it so awesome? A question from Linda.
We're pretty awesome. So yes, it is a nonprofit. And we are awesome because of the people, honestly, that support the work that we do. Our executive director has been with us for 21 years this year, Chris, who you know, and our board is still, we call them generational, I guess, at this point. So some of the founding members, their companies are still around. And so we're on what we call like 4th and 3rd generation board members of these fabulous farmers who wanted to be sustainable, which was a very progressive thing to be doing in the early 90s. And they're still plugged in 25 years later. I think that's really a big testament to what we do, who those people are, and how we can keep doing really good work, all the support.
Well, we want to make sure that when Christy Marshall comes in, she shows up to most of our day drinking. And so there's a rule: when Christy comes in, we all have a sip of wine. So cheers to you, Christy. I'm drinking a little Smash Rosé. It's a Paso Robles wine, SIP certified. Also made in a LEED certified winery. We have one of the only certified sustainable wineries in Santa Barbara. So not only is the winery certified, but also the vineyard is. And the question comes to me is, what is sustainability? And I love that sort of people, planet, and prosperity idea. To me, the idea of sustainability is about multi-generational farming. It's about leaving a piece of dirt in a better place than your father gave it to you. I think about sustainability in the perspective of my Presbyterian minister grandfather, who used to take me camping. And before we left our campground, we would rake it. So when we left, it was not only clean, but it looked like perfect barn aisles. It was so the next people that came in would be shamed. I think he was just shaming people because no one rakes but that was what he did. He was also a magical man. I'm not a religious guy, but he had to deal with a man upstairs. He would go to a dry creek and pull out 16-inch trout. I mean, he just had this amazing understanding of nature. And that's kind of what sustainability is. It's a little bit of magic. It's knowing what the dirt needs, knowing what the vines need, and then using whatever you can. Now, there's also things about sustainability that as a viticulturist was perturbing. First of all, we have to deliver a sound crop every year to be economically prosperous, to stay in business, to be financially sustainable. So, and I've seen organic farmers that decided to give up their entire year's crop because they didn't want to use a spray. I'd like to say that I would use the lowest impact material that would get me to where I wanted to be in the quality of my fruit. I read somewhere that if you snapped your fingers and turned the world's production of food 100% organic, we would lose about 30% of the world's population by starvation in about a year. So organic is a little bit, you got to be careful with organic, because I think organic is a little bourgeois and exclusionary by nature. Isn't it nice that these, prosperous white people are talking about farming without chemicals when the rest of the world is hungry? Well, maybe the world's not hungry, but I want to make sure that I understand. I'm saying this for a reason. The reason is, when I got into the Vineyard team and I start learning sustainable and organic practices, bringing sheep in, bringing chickens in, mowing alternate rows, going no-till, all of these things, increasing a little bit of canopy management to increase air and wind and the efficacy of fungicide applications. The funny thing is, even as someone who believed organic by nature is exclusionary and kind of bougie, the closer I got to the organic model, the wines just kept getting better. It was sort of like I was an atheist and everything I prayed for, God just gave me to spite me. It was really weird. It was really weird. So I think to a certain extent, as the guy who they may put as the turd in the punch bowl at the end of the panel on biodynamics, because I know a lot more about who Rudolf Steiner was than most biodynamic producers, and they don't like to hear about the man. They like to hear about, dirt and biodiversity. And anyways, the idea that I understood, and I was not specifically enamored with organic viticulture, the idea that I ended up being almost 100% organic at Clopepi, why did it make the wine taste better? I'm asking you. I'm actually really.
Yeah. I mean, my best sort of response to that from, anecdotally talking to a lot of farmers is like the effort and the time and the hands-on approach that you probably ended up doing because of that. So really what you're talking about, and what's a big part of sustainability is integrated pest management and something that we call IPM. And this is just one piece of like everything else that sustainability covers because it's very holistic. But we have this great person on our board named Paul Kraut, who's a pest control advisor. So these are people who have education and have an accreditation so that they're able to use pesticides. But he explains that integrated pest management using a pesticide is like the last thing on the chart. There's so many other, it's like this decision tree. So it's like, number one, how bad is the problem? Do you even have to do anything about it? Or is it livable, right? And a lot of times it is. And then you kind of work your way down the decision tree and you decide like, well, okay, is there like an alternative method? Is there some sort of beneficial insect or a beneficial, critter of some sort that I could introduce? Are there other cultural practices I could do? Like you were talking about removing leaves to help, reduce mildew pressure. So there's all of these other practices that you can do before you get to using a pesticide and then making that part of your decision. So, and we have a lot of people who are organic and who are also SIP certified as well. So that, the two don't exclude each other. A lot of the times they do go hand in hand. And usually what people say is when they've added on SIP certified as well, if they're already farming organically, is that they love that it's looking at all of these other areas like energy conservation, water conservation, how they treat their employees, business sustainability. The overlap on kind of the pest management, the soil side, all of that is still there and it's very cohesive.
And I'm looking at this, and this may be turned, but this is a little card that I keep on my table when I'm pouring our wines when people ask what SIP certified is. And if you look at this, there's a lot of issues that SIP covers that that Demeter and USDA organic does not, such as reduce risk pesticides, water conservation, energy conservation, air quality, packaging, recycling, fruit quality, social responsibility, continuing education, sound business practices, and community relations. And that to me brings up this question is, I talk about this when I lecture at Cal Poly, as well as when on AVAs, as well as when I talk about viticulture, is the difference between a prescriptive system and a descriptive system. A prescriptive system to me would be like Demeter or CCOF or the National Organic Program, where they're like, if you use X, you are excluded. You are prohibited from being part of the cool crew. To say, we don't care that you give your employees $250,000 a year, a Ferrari, and platinum insurance. That doesn't really matter. But if you spray Roundup, sorry, we hate Monsanto, get the hell out. And one thing I always loved about SIP is that it's a descriptive system. Like if the AOC in France is prescriptive, the AVA system in California is descriptive. If organics and biodynamic is prescriptive, use this, you can't play. SIP says, hey, if you've got a stray hair up your butt and you really, really need to apply this product, well, you're going to have to show us how you're going to make up for that. That everything is a descriptive system and nothing. Is there anything that's a deal breaker in SIP?
Well, the way the program is set up is there's like required practices that are, mandated to be done. There is, I guess, like what you're saying, an exemption process where if someone ran into a situation where they couldn't make a requirement, they have like this process that they could go through to see about getting relieved of that for maybe only that certification year or something like that. So the whole way the process is laid out, though, does allow this flexibility that you're talking about, because farming in Paso is not the same as farming in Napa or Santa Maria, or even like across Paso, east and west is going to be rather different. They have very different rainfall. So within the required practices, those are ones that we found to be applicable and good across the board. But then we have these additional practices called management enhancements, where people can pick and choose what they're going to do based off of what makes sense for them. So they can pick their own best practices based off of location, size, whatever kind of resources that they have going on. So that's where they can really build the best, farming or winemaking practices to suit what they're doing.
I don't know how you guys did. All the time I spent at UC Davis studying viticulture, every class started the same way. Everything in viticulture is site specific. Every single thing is site specific. And the site you might have 4 different mesoclimates within one AVA or even one vineyard. In fact, you could argue that if you have a vineyard with 2,000 vines in it, you've got 2,000 microclimates within that vineyard. Every single vine within the fruiting area can be declared its own little microclimate. So is there any way you can describe how you guys got to the point where you could give us this book to look for everybody in the Central Coast to learn about best practices without losing anything as a result of giving advice that wouldn't suit a specific site?
Well, a lot of work went into it on the back end. So we had a technical committee that took that original self-assessment, and they spent about 4 years writing what's now the SIP certified program. So that was a lot of their time, effort, energy, expertise. These are farmers who've been in the industry for a while, with them putting kind of like their best stab at what they thought that should look like. And then from there, we sent it out for external peer review. So we sent it to experts, all over the country. So people who would be like a professor at Davis or someone at Cornell, experts in each of those kind of segments, whether it be human resources or water quality, all of that, got their feedback on it so that we could make sure, we're asking questions that are going to be feasible, things that are required are truly good requirements. And that's actually still a big part of our program. So we get it externally peer reviewed every 5 years. So we're always adding in new science, new technology, new best practices so that we raise the bar with that. And then the final step is piloting it. You don't really know until someone does it. So in 2008, that was our chance to pilot the certification process. We had 13 vineyards locally, and that gave us the time to get feedback from all of those members who would go through the certification process. And if they found, hey, this isn't really working, and we saw that across the board, or like, we don't really understand exactly what you're looking for in this area, then we can improve our language, behind what we're requesting. So it's a whole process to get it to where it is now.
I've got 2 questions also coming in from Linda. And if anybody on Facebook wants to ask a question, please do. And does SIP sustainability in practice prioritize which practices are more essential? I think you just said that. And then can you drill down on what SIP calls out for filtration processes? Is that for irrigation water, or is that going to be for winery water?
Yeah, for winery.
It says drill down on what.
Yeah, we do have a question in there. Yeah, we do have a question there that does address filtration and like the different materials that can be used. You can actually find the standards. It's something we're very transparent about. If you go to sipcertified.org and you go to SIP certified or get certified, I'm sorry, and then there's a bottom that says like standards and documents on it, and you could get the whole standards there. It's kind of a beast, but a lot of the times there's like multiple questions that will address like these different specific practices like that.
No, anyone who studies wine who wants to know a little bit more about viticulture, remember, viticulture will change the way you drink wine as much as anything, including winemaking. Understanding what a vine goes through and the sort of processes that the grapes go through for the flavors. One thing I want to make sure we talk about too is when we talk about people, planet, and prosperity. If there's any way to sort of bridge the gap between how these things are playing out in the world of sustainability and how they impact, and what does it mean to someone who's at home drinking a glass of SIP certified Smashberry Rosé. So, just in case you're thirsty, a nice Smashberry Rosé would be a great option right now. 77% Grenache, 20% Syrah, 3% Chardonnay. let's talk about people first, and talk to me a little bit about people, and then maybe I'll riff on it how I think people impact the quality of wine in the glass. Or you can vibe on it too. It's up to you.
Yeah. Well, so from our end, people are our most valuable resource. We can't have this lovely wine without all of the people out there involved with making it. So I loved where you were going with this earlier, and I'd like to hear more about how any of us at our job feel so much more engaged, so much more interested if we understand not only like the task that we're doing, but how it fits into the bigger picture. So there's a lot that goes around employee education. Of course, safety is always going to be a top-notch part of it. So all of that kind of combines to engage your workforce in a greater way. You know, when we talk to a lot of the people who are in the program, they have employees who've been with them for decades in some cases, because they provide a nice place to work. You know, and not only are they getting that education, they're getting good benefits. So that's a huge component of it. I think kind of the next step out of it is the community part of it. So there's tons and tons of ways that, you know, wine brands can give back, whether that be through, you know, directly through something like a charitable donation. Or I love there's a project here that comes out of Tally Vineyards. It's called Mano Tinta. And so a portion of those sales goes to benefit, I think it's called like the Fund of Vineyard and Farm Workers. So really, really cool projects that are directly benefiting the community. And another aspect too is that understanding that, you know, the vineyard and the winery has neighbors. And so we want to make sure that we're interacting and helping educate the people who are around us too. Another wonderful example is in the Edna Valley. There's a lot of homes that are there, along with a number of different beautiful wineries. And people will want to kind of stroll through the vineyards, but it's not always safe to do that because there could be tractors and equipment roving around. So what one of the local vineyard companies does is they provide all of their workers with a letter, because not all of them will be able to speak English necessarily and have a conversation. So they have all of a letter with them that says, you know, like, hey, we can't have you in the vineyard right now because it's not necessarily a safe environment, but we would love to schedule a tour with you. And here's the number that you can call. And I think that's the coolest practice, because people are in there because it's interesting, it's beautiful, it's fun to be around. And then they can still have that opportunity and actually learn even more by going on a tour with a farmer. How cool is that?
It's awesome. And yeah, even the most organic and inert sprays you can spray on a vineyard have a 24-hour re-entry interval. And an REI just basically means that you have to post it. And if someone in the agricultural sort of policing industry is driving by and sees the REI out and you sprayed and you said you were spraying and there's people walking in your vineyard, you can get in trouble. We used to have a disc golf course around Clopepi. And when we had REIs, the entire vineyard was absolutely not only out of bounds, but you couldn't even go get your Frisbee. So that made it for very, very difficult rounds. Speaking of people, this is the way. And also one thing about people too, I mean, yeah, one thing that you had mentioned earlier kind of reminds me of a great quote, which is the greatest fertilizer for a vineyard is the vineyard manager's footsteps, right? It's all about engagement. People always said, well, if you don't believe in biodynamic, if you think Rudolf Steiner was sort of a neo-scientist kind of charlatan, which I can prove he was, man didn't believe in physical science, atomic theory, and he believed that human beings were stuck on our way of becoming beings of ether. And honestly, in all of his lectures, started off saying, "I have no formal agronomic training, but let me tell you how to grow certain things." Anyways, I thought that in general, one thing that they say, well, why can biodynamic work so well, and why do some of the greatest wines, including Romani Conti, the most expensive wine in the world, which is grown biodynamically, what's the deal? I'm like, well, first of all, you don't have anything to go back and say, what would it taste like? It was also the greatest vineyard while it was being farmed commercially. But at the same time, when you have someone who's dedicated to be in the vineyard every day, when you have someone who's dedicated to see every row of their vineyard, like my wife and I did when we were at Clopepi, this is a secret, but we took a cocktail walk every night. It wasn't that we always saw every row every day, but every night we took the greyhounds for a 1 mile walk around the vineyard. And when you see the vineyard, when you engage, I think the power of biodynamics is the passion of the people that follow it. It's the desire to grow great wine. It is the idea of engagement and farming for the moment and not fixing the problems that happened before. I'll also say that to close on my idea of people is it's all about fine tuning over retraining. If at Clopepi, we had the same folks there. I think we had the same employees for almost 25 years. So once I got them understanding canopy management, once I got them understanding, leaf pulling, suckering, tractor work, the reason why it happened each year, instead of having to go back and teach the fundamentals again, we say, hey, remember last year? Well, I got, a report from Ken Brown or Adam Tolmack that we want to do like 10% more leaves on this side, 5% less on this side. So we were fine tuning every section and every block of the vineyard to successfully make better and better wine every year, not because we were necessarily practicing something special, chemically or not chemically, but we were applying what I like to call the genius of human discernment, allowing people who work for me to be brilliant and to be geniuses in their own right, and to taste that genius in your mouth. Because no matter what wine you guys are drinking right now, you're tasting the genius, and I'm using the term lightly, but you're tasting the genius of 100 people that were associated driving trucks, producing the chemicals that we use in the vineyard, to say something you've never heard a wine salesman ever say. All these things are really important. So, you guys have a VT scholarship too, right? Vineyard team.
We do.
How does
we do? So we started this program, I think what was that?
Oh, and I said, I'm sure there's someone listening that's like, I want a scholarship. So.
Yeah, so our scholarship is for members, so children who are of our members, or a guardian who's one of our members. And so what we've ended up with over the past few years is, for the most part, I think nearly all of them have been first generation college kids, which is amazing. And so far we've given away about $76,000 in scholarships. We've actually had a lot of people who've won multiple years in a row. And we usually, announce it and give away the scholarship at our annual member barbecue. And it's so fun to get the students there and hear their story, and especially the ones that we've been seeing year over year. And one of them, actually, who's just so lovely, was so inspired by this. And her dad is, I believe he's a tractor driver at Mesa Vineyard Management. She loved the whole process so much, she's actually looking into getting a degree in viticulture now. So it changed, kind of her original focus from animal science over to viticulture.
Well, lost a vet, gained a viticulturist. So that's, that's fantastic. It's really good to hear. Let's talk a little bit about the planet. Let's talk, I always like to say, because again, I'm sort of eternally the turd in the punch bowl, but it's, how much of this is really about the planet and how much about it is human flourishing? Because when I hear people talking about the planet, I know that this planet has been around for 4.55 billion years. Thank you, Claire Patterson. The planet will be fine, right? We're talking about human flourishing here, aren't we? What is it about the planet that you want people to know, and how viticulture can do a better job of increasing the safety and the flourishing of human beings?
Yeah, well, you got to take care of the planet so that humans can flourish too. So I think it goes both ways. The planet piece is usually, what you think about when you hear the word sustainable. And there's lots of really good visual examples of that. So the next time you're cruising by a vineyard, look at those grasses that are growing in between the vine rows. So those are cover crops. And they do all kinds of great sustainable functions. So they help prevent erosion. They can filter water as it moves through. They can provide nutrients back into the soil for the vines themselves. They can even provide a habitat for beneficial insects. So again, a lot of sustainable practices too, they don't just have one function. A lot of times there's overlap and they kind of build on each other. That's a great one. We talked a little bit about integrated pest management earlier. So a really cool thing too are barn owls. So you'll see barn owl boxes out in a lot of vineyards. They eat gophers, so they're great little natural predators. You mentioned sheep before, so that's another cool practice too. They're like little lawnmowers to have out there. And then, it goes beyond that too. So we're looking at things like irrigation efficiency. There's lots of good technology nowadays that people can use in addition to their own expertise. Like you said, the boots on the ground is bar none. And you need that in conjunction with technology to kind of ground truth it. But people have been able to use the technology to significantly reduce irrigation in some areas, or really fine tune it. Or like in the winery, a good practice is to like dry clean before you turn on the hose. There's lots of like high pressure, low volume, balls that you can use to clean the tanks. There's tons and tons of things on the energy side, or solar panels are another thing that you'll see a lot out. And all of that are practices that help protect our planet and preserve it for the long term.
Cool. I got a question from Linda. And if anyone else has any questions, let us know. Jennifer's talking about cranberry crops in Massachusetts having a problem with being organic. But the good question I see also, as well as that one, was more of a statement than a question. Did I document those boundary checks? I probably didn't document them. When I used to walk, I think she might be talking about my cocktail walks, and those boundary checks were just us really walking the dogs. But yes, I did keep a pocket notebook with me, and I would actually write how many rows. Like if the guys were working on canopy management, let's say they were putting shoots, they were shoot positioning, putting shoots in a vertical shoot position trellis, I would write, they did 12 rows today or 17 rows. So I would document some of the stuff, but because I was a vineyard manager, a full-time vineyard manager on 29 acres, I better be able to remember pretty much where we are on every cultural practice that we're doing and how my guys are doing. Because I mean, there are vineyard managers that are in charge of 25 different vineyards and 35,000 acres, and they've got the stuff in their brain. So certainly I would. And the other part of her question was, are gophers nocturnal? If you have ever driven a tractor at night, clearly, I don't know if they're nocturnal, but I've never seen so many damn gophers above ground than at night. And obviously that's when the owls grab them. And if you don't think owls are very good at killing gophers, I suggest finding a nice owl box under a nice oak tree. Go under that owl box or go clean that owl box out. You will see a 4-foot pile of owl pellets, which are basically what they cough up. It's kind of hard to say it nicely after they have consumed and digested most of. And so literally 3-foot pile of owl pellets after like 3 years. I read somewhere, and tell me if you've heard differently, that a nesting pair of owls will take up to 30 rodents a night.
I've heard that stat too. I think that's true. We have a really cool podcast on this, actually. It's with Mark Browning, and he's like a barn owl expert at this point. He's done a lot of research on it. Yeah, so if you look up sustainable wine growing, whatever podcast player you use, there's one on barn owls, and there's just fascinating stats on it there. And even talked about how far they travel. They thought they only went like 50 miles, but it turns out they go way farther than that, and then they come back.
Give them a place to breed, and you'll see them every December. It's amazing. I have a picture of my little 8-week-old puppy. I have to show this because if that is not just the cutest little puppy ever. That's a little border collie at about 12 weeks. So basically, like the day that I took that picture, which was in sort of maybe February, I heard a ruckus on my balcony at Clopepi. So I ran out there really quick because I heard it was Rosa, my border collie, and it sounded like something was attacking her. There were 4 juvenile barn owls surrounding her, trying to get her because she was just this little ball of fluff. They must have thought she was a rodent. And I'll tell you what, well, if you know anything about border collies, she was fine. But yeah, she gave them a good run for their money. So that was interesting stuff. So let's talk about prosperity. So you were talking maybe about some fruit quality trials and budget. What do you want to say about how prosperity impacts wine and what we're drinking in our glass?
Yeah, well, like what you were saying earlier, if you don't have a prosperous business, you can't continue to take care of the people on the planet. So that's a key segment to sustainability. A lot of people will call it the 3-legged stool. So the people, planet, prosperity, and 3-legged stool, whatever you prefer. So we look at things like having, a multi-year budget, having like plans for your employees. So you're very organized in case there is turnover, ways to maintain retention. And then into the fruit quality, of course, as we're going into some of these delicious wines. I love the smashberry. Playing around with different trials is always a cool thing. So that could be in the vineyard or in the winery. All of this, taste testing to see what those impacts are, ways that you can tweak, improve your wine quality over time. All of that is important to, the bottom line of the business, to make sure that you're producing a really good product too, of course, because ultimately that's what you're doing, is you're producing good wine.
I would say, to me, the prosperity, it's sort of this kind of like organic flow from learning to grow great grapes, taking your knowledge to grow great grapes. Because once you have the knowledge to grow great grapes, it doesn't cost a damn penny more. It's about that knowledge you have. It's about your ability to grow grapes. It's your ability to go into the vineyard, to drive the tractor, to see what the vines need, to adapt, to move, to be proactive. And if you do this, and this is going to be sort of my sort of take home message moment, is that all of these things combine, that when you apply yourself as a viticulturist, as you apply yourself as a farmer, as you apply yourself as someone who cares about what you do, that is going to make a big difference in the final product. And to be honest, I strongly believe that the moment that we pull the trigger, go in there with a crew and harvest that fruit, that we have locked in the potential quality of that wine. I'm not saying I can't screw it up. I'm not saying I can't put a little bit of polish or shine on it. But the moment that those grapes are picked and that those bins are on their way to the winery, that moment represents the potentiality of the universe of that wine. And everything that has come before that, the people, the education, and also the prosperity. And then, of course, that begs the question. Generally, wine is you could argue wine is a way that people that have done well in life spend their money as much as they are out there. There's not a lot of people that start poor and start a wine business to make money. It's can be more of a place where we spend money, which might give us the idea of why it's so progressive, is because the people that are doing it because of love, not because necessarily of necessity. But in the end, prosperity might have just been completely upended by this whole COVID thing. So in a post-COVID world where we might see 2,000 tons of Cabernet unpicked this year in Paso, what does prosperity look like now? And how has it changed? I'm hitting you with a tough question that I didn't tell you I was going to ask.
Yeah, that is a big question. So I guess part of that, to just think about it in terms of like business planning would be, that's why you'd have a budget, or that's why you'd have, a game plan, because there are black swan events. We had the Great Recession in 2008. It wasn't that long ago. And that was a very difficult time too. And that's actually when we launched this program. Interestingly, there were, at a time when a lot of people were having a difficult time financially, they had to make choices about what wine clubs they could stay with or not if they were in that position and they were fortunate enough to be making that kind of a decision. We heard from a lot of brands that they had people staying with them because they wanted to support their sustainable practices. So when they had to make a choice, that was really important to them, and it was a key decision-making factor. And, beyond something like that, anytime we have one of these like crazy disruptive events, it's a chance to innovate. Yes. Really, that's when we ended up with like $2 Chuck, right? Too, which it ended up to be a very successful brand. So I think even though it is going to be very difficult, there's going to be a lot of people who truly do struggle. We're going to see some really interesting, creative, new, like maybe business trends that come out of this. Something that I love is I've seen some people doing the small like sampler of wine. So that to me just seems like a rad idea, because I love going out and to a brewery and you get a flight of beer and it's like, oh, so fun. Like now I can get like a sampler pack of wine to my house. I love that idea. I think that's brilliant.
We're going to launch that next.
That's a new market.
J. Wilkes wine tasting room in Santa Barbara down on State Street. And the idea will be 100, or we haven't decided whether 100 or 187 milliliter bottles. And then you get 4 of them, take them home, and there's a QCR code. We might do a live one, but there'll be a QCR code where you can just shoot the code, and I will personally take you through all 4 wines and taste them and pretend that I'm the bartender behind the table. So that'll be kind of fun. We actually have a master sommelier watching us right now, and Mr. Will Costello, MS, a failed pilot. No, he was studying to be a pilot, and then he decided to become a master sommelier instead because, he just wanted to do something easy right? One of only 256. By the way, master sommeliers are 100 times rarer than an astronaut. For every one master sommelier that has been given that wonderful designation, over 100 people have been in space. So he's a rare man. He wants to know how many SIP certified vineyards there are in California. Any idea about statistics on that?
Yeah, sure. There's 40,000 acres that are certified, and we actually have one property in Michigan that got certified as well. And then that's spread out within California at least, between Santa Barbara all the way up into the North Coast. So we're in like Napa, Sonoma, Lake County, all those areas up there.
Is there a Robert Mondavi of sustainability in California? Do you think there's someone who pushed this whole thing forward? Someone who might have been like, I'm thinking of like David Lett starting Pinot Noir in Oregon, or Ken Brown doing Pinot Noir down in Santa Barbara. Is there anyone you recognize as being sort of an industry leader early on to sort of push this thing forward?
Yeah, well, actually Mondavi was one of the original people in our Central Coast group. So that is one that is part of it. Locally, it's a lot of, it's a lot of like the farmers, I guess, themselves. Jackson Family Wines is a big participant in our program, and they have been since the very beginning. They've been involved in the Vineyard team even before SIP too. So I know that they've always been very progressive. We have a few farmers that have management companies, so they're working with different brands, farming their properties for them, that are huge, huge proponents of sustainability. So I don't know if there's just one. I feel like it's almost been this collective. And even when we talk to people who are, from a different wine region that's not the Central Coast, they always say they like this area because it's very collaborative feeling, as people are here to share information and to learn from each other. And so I think it's that group of people who's been able to push sustainability and make it, more of an everyday thing for more people.
I'm going to also, and as we sort of come down to some of our last questions, and I have a speed round of questions for you too that you're completely unaware of, which are going to be fun. Remember, Beth is also a physical trainer, and she could do more push-ups with me basically like on her back than I could do anyways. We were having a discussion about this, but follow her on Instagram. I'll say this a little bit later too, at Bethersize, just as it sounds, at Bethersize, and you will see someone who will make you feel very like you need to get into the gym a little bit more. It makes me feel, when I saw her working out, it made me feel like the last time I was at South Beach, Florida, walking around. I don't know what those people do. I think they work out 6 hours a day, do some hot yoga, and then they grease up and they strut. And I'm a fit 51-year-old man, but damn, girl, that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Why certification matters. Is there, as we progress into this, is there an example of a vineyard or a winery that you have seen that have taken what SIP has to offer and seen an intense increase in quality, ratings, accolades? You don't have to name names, but I know that what I learned from you guys is going to influence the way that I grow and make wine for the rest of my life. And I want to just really, A, say thank you, and B is talking a little bit about why certification matters. Feel free to vibe on that any way that you want.
Yeah, well, I think there's a few components of certification that are important. Number one, in the marketplace, it helps the consumer know that when someone says that they're a sustainably made wine, there's something to back that up with. Like I was mentioning earlier, the standards are available on our website. We're very transparent about exactly what it means for someone to put the SIP certified logo on their label of wine. So I think on the consumer side, that's how they can make, a purchase decision that supports their own values. Yeah, there it is. And then on the farming or the winemaking side, it still is that awesome learning tool that, thank you for the compliment, that you said it is. So for anybody who's going through the certification program, they always say it's helping them learn about new practices as science and technology are changing, and we update the program rules. It helps them be more consistent too. because it is audited annually. There's certain practices that, do have to be done in order to achieve the certification. So it maintains that consistency within their own practices themselves. It's kind of like that, little double check on them. So I think all of that combined does help people, produce better wines, have better quality in their fruit, over the long term by a part of being in the certification program.
That's awesome. And I look at it as sort of a library of viticultural knowledge, a library of viticultural checks. And one thing that I really enjoyed about the process of going through SIP, which was, to me, I did it over maybe a week where I was maybe did 2 hours a day. I mean, the process to me, as it was first developed, and I haven't seen the process in probably at least a decade, but it took me probably somewhere in the area of 10 to 14 hours to do the original work. And then, to be honest, it was basically all the photographs, all of the soil samples. It was basically, well, you guys want to know if people are telling the truth, because a certification that has no teeth is no certification at all. If I would have had people to help and I wasn't, driving a tractor, doing the winemaking and everything else, it's just an excuse, but it is an intense process. And if you do it right, you will not be the same viticulturist before and after you come out of the process. And one reason why I felt that certification matters, because not only did it help me define how I can be more green, more sustainable, but then the question is, why do it anyways, unless it makes the wine better? And that was the thing. I was all in because, I used to follow the Grateful Dead, for God's sake. I'm a damn hippie. Look at this hair. Actually, I had a flat top at the beginning of COVID. But in the end, what I learned is the process of challenging yourself. The points that I couldn't take were the points that stuck in my head. It's like, if I go do a lecture and 80 people come up to me and say, that was fantastic, I loved how you talked about the history of wine. Passionate, great, I loved it. And one person comes up and goes, dude, you need to learn to talk a little less. What are you going to remember, right? You're going to remember the one guy, sort of like that great line in Almost Famous, where the lead singer for Sweetwater, he's like, I look for the guy in the audience that's not getting off, and I make him get off. It's like you see the curmudgeon and you want to. For me, the process of, okay, well, I do not, I don't know the media filter, the media that I use in my filter, so I better go find out. So it gave me that process, and I think it was amazing in the sense that not only is certification making your wine safer to drink, by virtue of what is and isn't sprayed in them, even though conventional viticulture is actually one of the lowest impact conventional agricultural processes anywhere in the United States. We don't want to spray. Chemicals are expensive. We don't want to spray them. Obviously, we want to keep the fruit clean. I'd say the more you observe your vineyard, the less you have to spray. The less you observe your vineyard, the more you have to spray. Less and more. I think I said that right. I have been drinking. It is day drinking with Wes Hagen. Let's see if I did anything else. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how people can get more information about Central Coast Vineyard Team?
Yeah, definitely. So there's two websites. If you want to learn about the Vineyard Team and all of our education that we have, you can find the Sustainable Wine Growing podcast there, or wherever you like to listen. We do some really great in the field tailgate meetings, usually when we're not in COVID. And we're also going to be doing our Sustainable Ag Expo still in the fall. That's at vineyardteam.org. To learn more specifically about SIP Certified, that's at sipcertified.org. So you can learn all about the program and all of the members that we have in there. And you can follow us on Instagram and Facebook at SIP Certified.
Cool. And how about tell us a little bit about Body Rock TV?
Yeah. So I've been running a free 30-minute HIIT class twice a week for 8 years. And that's been like a local community thing that I've done. It's super fun. And so just out of dumb luck, I used to work out with Body Rock on YouTube, and I connected with them on Instagram, and now I'm one of their trainers. So it's been a blast. I love it. So if you want to watch workouts and learn about some really fun workouts that you can do at home, I'm all about things that are easy to do anywhere. I don't think you need to have a gym. You don't need to have a ton of equipment. You can get a great workout in with whatever you have floating around in 30 minutes. So I have tons and tons of stuff on Instagram at Bethersize. Thank you for mentioning that. And then if you want to work out and do like a full workout with me, that's on Body Rock. So they're a subscription service. It's kind of like Netflix, but for working out.
Oh, that's awesome. Cool enough. And then let's see. All right, are you ready for the speed round?
Yes.
So you just have to just answer the question is whatever options I give you, just take the best option. Meat or plant-based for workout protein?
Meat.
Meat. Waffles or pancakes?
Pancakes.
Disneyland or SeaWorld?
Disneyland.
Dinner and dancing or Netflix and chill? And this is in a post-COVID world.
Dinner and dancing.
Awesome. You get one workout in the person's absolute physical prime. Jack LaLanne, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Jane Fonda, or Rachel McLeish?
Jane Fonda.
Awesome. Which is the worst birthday, Christmas or April Fool's?
April Fool's is my birthday.
I might have Facebook stalked you. Best exercise solution for a 51-year-old middle-aged man with white man's butt disease.
Do some bridges.
Bridges, okay. I'll think about that. I'm not talking about myself, I swear. Livermore persons only bonus question. Carl Wente, hot or not?
Oh, hot.
Yes.
I haven't seen a picture in a while.
I'm just saying, I'm a fairly straight man, but he's definitely one of my three. All right, so fleeb around without any help or go visit Body Rock TV?
Go visit Body Rock. All
right, last question. Dead bugs or crunches?
Dead bugs.
Yeah, I'm finding they're doing pretty good stuff. I'm enjoying myself. We had this wonderful conversation, and I will end our conversation this way. If you go to prison, you usually get out like ripped and rock hard. Why shouldn't you get out of COVID the same way? So think about challenging yourself a little bit. My wife and I are trying 3 times a week. I kind of failed this week. It's a little bit hard to do my exercise with a messed up finger, but also the last thing we should also mention what we were drinking tonight. I had the J. Wilkes 2019, a preview of our new Pinot Blanc, which I'm drinking because I'm absolutely in love with it. 18 is great, but the 19 I think is even better. And we have the 2019 Smashberry Rosé that I was describing a little bit earlier. As we always say before we close, and I allow Beth to say goodbye to all of you folks, I will remind you, as I always do at the end of our shows here at Day Drinking, to find someone in your friend circle, find someone in your social media circle, and find someone in your community that you may not know very well and that needs some help, that needs some encouragement, that may just need a phone call or a conversation between the garage and you walking by, and make sure they feel some love, that they feel the idea that we're going to get back to normalcy, that this is a community building exercise. And to trust science, to trust medicine, and to make your body stronger. The stronger our bodies are, the better we have a chance of holding back this virus in case it gets in us. So flourish, work out, have a great day, drink some wine, and now I hope you understand why sustainability is important. Beth, would you like to say anything as we close?
Thank you so much for having me. This was really fun, and I look forward to finishing the rest of this Smashberry.
Indeed, and if you ever need a panelist or someone to yell at people, extra genetic and sort of a huge shout out. If you ever need someone on a panel or on a Zoom or anything, please reach out to me. I'm always happy to support Vineyard for everything that they've taught me. I would say Vineyard team, Brian Babcock and the University of California at Davis are my 3 greatest sources of wine information. So I appreciate you and your organization, the Vineyard team, for being so there when I needed you. So appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been fabulous.
I didn't even
have you do more.
Indeed, let's do this again. I didn't mean to, but literally we are going to be almost to the second, exactly 1 hour. So I'm just going to assume this was, again, had nothing to do with what we tried to do. It just is a beautiful way of finishing. And I hope you have an awesome weekend if you get one, and an amazing Friday night. So have a fun time going out for dinner and dancing as soon as the possibility arises.
I will.
Thank
Thank you.
We'll see you guys on Monday on Day Drinking. Cheers.